Welcome everyone to another show on the podcast. I'm really excited for the discussion today with my guest. So let's just jump straight into it. You know, my guest today is someone who has been in the sales and training game for about 35 years. He's the CEO of Project Moneyball. Now, for any of those who probably watched the movie Moneyball, you probably get a sense of what it is that he's trying to do here. So basically, he helps marketing, sales, and enablement leaders identify their go-to-market readiness and performance problems based on what really happens during sales rep calls with buyers. So what this really means is he helps you know where to place your bets to deliver consistent incremental improvements in the sales process so that you win more deals. Now, that's got to be music to any commercial leader's ears. It certainly is to mine. So please help me welcome Avner Baruch. Avner, thank you and welcome to the show.
I'm very happy to be here, Moeed, and thank you for inviting me over. I'm really excited to be here. You know, I've been following you and we've been chatting and discussing this for quite a long time. So that's a great opportunity for me to be here and to be speaking about, you know, my perspective about training, sales, and working alongside leaders and coming up with Project Moneyball. So very happy to be here.
Yeah, and really looking forward to a spirited discussion around sales enablement and training. And yeah, we first connected actually, it was during I think it was the Inquisitor podcast where I talked about trust and the research around trust and why it's lacking so badly in sales process. But actually it's the key to every decision being made by a buyer. And the fact that that's being missed out is a huge thing because quite frankly, that's the main prism by which buyers view who they should do business with. Let's dive in here, Avner, into a question that I always ask, which is, you know, you've been in the sales enablement game for a very long time. How would you describe the current state of the sales profession?
So there are many ideas or many answers I could provide, but I think that, you know, the bottom line is it's becoming more and more digital, and everyone would agree to the fact that, you know, it's like it's everywhere. First of all, you know, technology has changed so fast, so many technologies, so many new companies offering, you know, it might look the same or not, but altogether, you know, because of technology, the market, the space is changing so fast. From a sales point of view, we found ourselves in a more, you know, of a digital workplace, and we need to deal with more digital applications. You know, there's a more overhead to our work. And what I see also is that leaders, you know, tend to be more digital, more data-driven. Of course, you know, there are those leaders that rely on skills, mainly on skills, and, you know, they hire people basically based on previous experience, etc. But I see also a new trend where new leaders, young leaders, they come with a more data-driven approach. So they have a very clear idea of what the sales stack should look like in order to not waste time on decisions or, you know, become more proactive and get a better understanding and visibility into whatever happens per stage of the sales cycle. In a short way, I could say that, you know, the sales space is becoming more digital, as I said before, but leaders really understand the benefits of using data, and they seek, you know, whatever they can find in order to enable their reps, manage their team at any given moment, and they really understand what is going on across the sales cycle. You know, the traditional way is like, you know, to wait for the end of quarter or end of year for those reports in order to understand what works, what doesn't work. And I think that most leaders today just, you know, can't afford that. So if I could point my finger at one, you know, the biggest trend in sales, leaders, you know, they really understand, as I said before, the benefits of a proactive and digital approach. As I said, you know, becoming more data-driven.
Do you think that sales leaders, and especially salespeople, know how to use that data though? Because there's obviously a spectrum in competency, but I keep hearing the fact that sales leaders still struggle to, and it's not just, they still use the data and almost morph it into their own world and their own experience, rather than actually it's opened their eyes to a completely new way of using that data to inform their activities. So are you seeing that, or are you seeing actually that there's a lot more leaders who are able to use data in the right way?
I can't actually say, you know, exact numbers or percentage, like, you know, 50% go with the traditional way, relying on whiteboards, and the other, remaining part of the sales reps are going with more digital approach. I can't actually say, where is the break-even point, but I can definitely tell you that I've worked with leaders that had like many options to choose from. They were using Clary and Salesforce and so many applications, like tens of applications, but in their office, behind their back, there was like stretching and writing numbers on their whiteboard in order to get a better understanding. So despite the fact that they have, whatever they need in order to become more data driven, they relied on those whiteboards because there was just simply too many applications to deal with. And sometimes, there are false positives and the reports are not very accurate or tend to like come late. So leaders can't actually afford, the time it takes to reach a conclusion. So they have their own way of understanding whatever goes on per stage, per opportunity, whatever. But again, there are leaders that they're more technical, they're more data driven, and they're not afraid of technology, or maybe they know how to use the right tools. They strongly believe and use those digital applications, and I can say that it works better in my opinion. If you use the right stack, the right sales stack, it will help you to get a better visibility and reach faster decisions.
It sounds like you kind of maybe partially answered one of the questions that I had in mind, which was, in your posts, I've seen you talk about how reps continue to struggle to find or use the right assets with the right prospects at the right time. Can you talk a bit more about that? Because that was very intriguing.
That's a beautiful question. I'd love to answer that. I think that, my answer would probably touch a few areas, not just this question, but probably I'll answer, multiple questions at the same time, even the one before. So I can't blame leaders or reps for the fact that, they're not leveraging the digital applications or the digital workplace that is given to them. It's not their main fault or main the responsibility doesn't fall on the reps or the leaders. What we want basically is to grow the business, to scale the business, to scale it up, to scale it out, to reach other markets and to hire more people. We are measured by the number of, by the growth of the company. So, sometimes we focus mainly on growing the team, but I've seen it so many times. You grow the team, you hire more and more salespeople, you increase your sales torque, as I like to say, to define it. But in most cases, you don't have enough capacity, bandwidth, or enablement capacity, enablement resources to help you to, one, onboard the new hires. Second, provide the ongoing resources you need in order to make sure that everyone maintains their skills or catch up with whatever it takes in order to reach out to new markets, whatever. So in most cases, I've seen many businesses just focus on hiring, growing the team, and not spending or investing the right amount of resources to be able to train the additional task force, etc. So the bottom line is the problem of not leveraging whatever you have, applications or whatever, or going back to your questions, reps struggle to find the resources they need in order to improve their go-to-market readiness. So if I put myself in the rep shoes, there are so many applications I need to deal with, so many areas I need to type in to register data. I need to update, report, whatever, do my housekeeping stuff. And it's just, it creates an overhead, and that creates a digital fatigue. And it comes at the expense of probably not managing my opportunities, my accounts properly, because I do need to allocate some time to manage all those different digital tasks that I'm instructed to do. I can't blame reps for not, doing their stuff, doing their housekeeping stuff, managing the opportunities or updating the stage whatsoever. It's not their fault entirely. From a leadership point of view, we need to consider every component that reps need to deal with in order to move from lead to closed one and whatever happens later. Just to prove my fact, to back up my answer, software leaders and technology leaders actually really understand this challenge, and in order to ease the pain and help sales reps to accomplish this task, which is to find the right resource in order to address the right need, read the right prospect at the right time. It's a struggle. It's a real pain that slows down many businesses. Fortunately, there are many options to choose from today, which basically address that specific need. Long story short, the idea is to use a technology, AI-based technology that understands what reps need per vertical, per go-to-market criteria, whatever it is, and basically offer the specific collateral, specific go-to-market, specific playbook at the time of need. Because the pain exists, because reps struggle to find the right resource in order to avoid a one-size-fits-all approach, which is basically to be able to speak the right message with the right prospect. There are so many technologies today, so many platforms that allow reps to find what they need in order to stay relevant and move faster and more effectively across the sales stages.
Interesting, because you've covered quite a few areas. To me, it seems obvious because it's something I'm doing with some of my own clients, right? Where they want to scale, but the first thing I say to them is, look, you can't hire people into a broken system, right? It's just not going to work. In fact, your efforts as a leader should be, am I creating the right ecosystem for the new people that I've hired to thrive, right? And if that's not the case, then I need to fix that system before bringing people in. To me, that seems very obvious, but like you, I've observed that in other companies. And you've also talked about, quite frankly, how do we inform the salesperson about the activities that either they're conducting or their team are conducting, and how can that information help them actually conduct their sales conversations in a far better way? Can you give, because that sounds like incredible, Nirvana, can you give some examples of how that would look like?
I think that many businesses today realize that going with the reactive approach, which is we'll wait, okay? We'll wait for leaders or reps or anyone who is in pain or is in need. Someone needs collateral, someone needs playbook, someone needs like the latest version of whatever it is. We'll just wait. Okay, we just posted everything on the marketing portal or LMS or whatever technology you're using in order to provide access to collateral. But altogether, from a leadership point of view or manager's point of view, we wait. We wait for someone to raise a hand, submit a ticket, or say, hey guys, this is the wrong version. So if no one actually complains, okay, that's okay. That means things are working well. That's the reactive approach. It doesn't work anymore. And more businesses understand that we can't wait. We can't rely on the reps' ability, motivation, willingness, or availability to basically share, there is a problem. I can't use this. This is the wrong version, whatever. We can't wait. Leaders cannot afford to lose time because of broken processes, as you said. So more and more businesses transition the sales tech or the selling processes or the workflows from reactive to proactive approach. If there is a way to simplify what I'm trying to say is they're trying to educate the technology to work for the reps instead of the other way around. The bottom line is digital adoption. It exists already. Okay, there are so many applications and platforms you can use in order to proactively provide access, or even better, proactively understand where the problem is, where the broken flow is. So you don't have to wait for the sales rep to basically say, hey, this is the wrong data, or this is the wrong playbook, or for some reason I can't actually complete the process of creating an opportunity. It breaks up every time. It breaks down every time. I click the approve, the acknowledge button. It just doesn't work. And think about this. How much time does it take to create an opportunity in a very complex environment? If it takes like 15 steps or 15 approvals, whatever, it's a waste of time, which we can basically leverage doing something else. Technologies today allow the business, the sales ecosystem, to first identify gaps, areas of friction or broken workflows automatically, and offer the sales rep the help they need in order to type in the right information. And if they get it wrong, they actually correct the reps. So the bottom line is we go with a proactive approach where first we scan whatever reps are doing, and then we offer them the help they need. And then we offer them the information they need in order to, provide that to the prospect. So I'll give you a very simple example. Okay, and I've seen it everywhere. You meet with a prospect, you are on a call with a prospect, and then the prospect asks you like, oh, do you comply with X regulation, whatever? And for some reason, you don't know. The sales reps don't know. So what they do, they just ask like, do you mind holding the line or hold the line for a few minutes? I'll consult with my peer, whatever. Or I'll just, type in a question in the, internal chat window and wait, whatever. Or, let's actually address that in the next meeting, and let's focus on something else. It's basically just, put sticks in the wheels. It doesn't work. You slow down the whole process. The alternative way is when you have this discussion with the prospect, and then the prospect mentions a name of a competition or a technology, automatically the rep sees, whatever they need to use on the fly, on the screen. So they don't have to struggle type in the, whatever the prospect says. The system recognizes automatically that there is a risk of losing the prospect's trust or posing the selling process because the rep doesn't have the capabilities or the knowledge to address that specific challenge. So the bottom line is technologies today offer the reps the information they need at the right time with the right prospect, given the right criteria. So it's like flying an F-35 compared to a Phantom F4, going manual or going completely, proactive and automatic.
Can you talk about some of those technologies? And you don't have to name vendors if you don't wish, but it sounds to me as if, I just want to try to understand that technology ecosystem, because you almost hinted at some point you need a technology that's almost a listening tool that's hearing some of those conversations. You need the right CRM that not only captures that information, but does so efficiently with less time from the sales rep, for example. You need some sort of data analytics, either a team or a technology, some form of competency that will consistently and continuously analyze that information to draw out insights. And I think you're almost hinting, and maybe I'm translating it that way. If you have a coaching structure, you're going to have a coaching culture, an effective one in your company, because then the sales leader is going to use that information, but they might even use technology to be able to conduct those coaching conversations in a better way. So can you just describe, you don't have to name vendors, but can you just describe what that technology ecosystem would look like, and what is important that companies need to have in order to be able to do the things that you described?
Let's put ourselves, in a sales rep shoes, and let's just pretend that we just got hired and this is like day one. And usually what happens is the leader will lack the resources, the time, the bandwidth to spend time with new hires. What they do is just, ask the new hires to spend time going over some, gong calls or resources on YouTube, whatever, or articles that, other reps that have been around long enough, they put together those pages on support pages, whatever. It doesn't work. That's like the most inefficient way of onboarding new hires. And I'm not saying that those applications are wrong. On the contrary, I'm a big fan of those technologies, but I'm just saying there's a better way of leveraging those technologies. And I'll start with the the most amazing technology that I can think of. Imagine that as a new hire, you need to practice your pitch. Okay, so you're given those slides and you memorize those talk tracks, etc. And in most cases, the traditional way is you practice with a friend or with another rep or with your manager if he can afford the time. Again, that's the most inefficient way. You don't want to burn the manager's time, with those trials. It's a waste of time and it doesn't help you, because in order to gain confidence, you really need to practice as much as you can with someone you can actually trust. Or from time perspective point of view, the best way would be like to practice with a virtual coach. There is a system, there is an application, there is a technology called Second Nature. So what it does, it helps leaders to prepare scenarios, scripts behind the scenes. As a new hire, you basically practice delivering your pitch and even, handling objections and pushbacks that the virtual prospect decided to put you against. So as a new hire, instead of practicing with a real, with a manager or with someone else and just waste their time, I'm practicing with a virtual avatar or virtual prospect, and that specific the technology knows to tackle to come up with the right objections and pushbacks or questions, based on the flow, based on the conversation flow. So as a rep, I can practice as many times as I want, and I can measure my progress. And once I'm satisfied with the way I'm pitching the sales deck, whatever, then I can take it and practice with my manager. When I do spend time with my manager, basically I'm more prepared. So I'm saving time for myself and for the manager. And basically, it helps both sides. It saves a great deal of time and money for the business. So that's from onboarding point of view. From the ongoing point of view, and again, those common tasks that reps need to deal with, creating an opportunity, a price book, a price quotation, whatever, depending on the technology that you're using, Salesforce or whatever CRM it is, okay? Some people don't have the experience, the previous experience, so there is a learning curve. And usually when there is a problem, when there is a gap, when they struggle to complete a step, they rely on someone else's availability. And we're in the selling business, okay? We need to sell. Every minute you spend on training someone else, it's a minute you're not spending with your prospect. So either way, it's a lose-lose situation. So those technologies I mentioned before, like WalkMe, for example, which I know very well. So what WalkMe does, or any other digital adoption does, is it scans every step on the page you are on. So if you are on the opportunity page or price quotation or whatever step it is, it knows every step and it identifies whatever you are typing in. And if there is any mismatch between what you're expected to type in and what you actually type in, it will alert the user. So it validates the information. In addition, it can proactively automate any process. So for example, again, creating an opportunity might take you a minute, might take you 5 minutes, but if you multiply that by the number of reps, it's a waste of time. And that's costing you a lot of money. Adoption, digital adoption, what they can do for the sales business, sales ecosystem, they can automate redundant steps. They can replace, those tedious jobs that reps hate to lose time for. And going from 5 minutes per stack to 5 seconds, the system, the adoption tool basically does everything for you. All you have to do is just acknowledge the information you're seeing on the screen. So it gives back, the sales reps and the ecosystem lots of time back. And that converts to money. So validation, data validation, automation, and from analysis point of view, we talked about analytics. So traditionally, businesses rely on sales ops or biz ops or the BI team. Not every business has a BI, by the way, and you probably know that. So either way, from a leader point of view, you rely on reports. Those reports basically come at the end of the quarter or end of year. And sometimes, you're given some dashboards which show you basically what goes on, during the sales cycle, whatever. But it doesn't tell you, why reps are struggling with a certain step or whatever. Those tools that I've mentioned before, they have their own layer of analytics. So they can actually give you, a deeper visibility into whatever process reps are dealing with. And they can provide you the reasons when reps are struggling. So if you have a workflow of 5 steps or whatever it is, they give you a better visibility, more granular visibility into whatever goes on from onboarding point of view, from enablement point of view, from completing a task point of view. Now, those are not, if you basically cross-reference, if you slice and dice the analytics that you gain from those tools and your CRM reports, that gives you, a better granularity or better visibility into, whatever goes on under the sales umbrella. But the bottom line is leaders basically don't have the time to do that. BI don't have the time to do that. Sales operations don't have the time to do that. It's just that every one of those functions have too much to deal with. To answer your questions, the opportunity, the technology exists. The problem is, how do we orchestrate everything together? We need a dedicated position, someone who understands sales ops, sales, BI, who is able to put together all those processes, extract all the data from all those different applications, and basically provide a picture, one idea of whatever goes on, orchestrate the entire processes. I hope this wasn't too long, but to make a long story short, again, the digital, the sales space is becoming more and more digital, and it's harder for leaders to reach the right conclusion at the right time, given all the applications that they need to use on a daily basis.
That was really interesting to hear, because I hadn't heard of Second Nature, but I hadn't heard of the other one that you mentioned, and that sounded really interesting. And I suppose we only just lightly touched on CRM, and I don't think any conversation around technology or sales technology would be complete without at least talking about CRM. So we know that CRM health is still a problem with a lot of sales team, and I guess I wanted to ask you, why do you feel that still is the case? Is that due to the CRM platforms out there not being fit for purpose, or is it the sales leaders or the business leaders that failing to use it or select the right ones in the right way? Why do you feel CRM is still a challenging situation for a lot of sales teams out there?
I'll try to answer that very shortly, because again, I can spend hours talking about that. But I think that the first reason is CRMs were designed for sales operations. For those admin analysts, they put together those buttons and features that can help them later to extract data in order to generate reports. And in order to basically help reps, sales reps, they are trying to come up with the best UI or user experience. So reps won't struggle or spend too much time completing the tasks that originally were implemented by technical people, analysts, sales operations, business operations. Now, just to prove my point, Salesforce understands that, they realize that, and then they decided to come up with a nicer look and feel, and the latest version of Salesforce, which is more like, an application which you can, build your own look and feel, and you can create your own components, and you can play around and, just arrange or assemble your dashboard or the working area in a way that makes more sense to you. But at the bottom line, it creates more overhead for sales operations, but that's a different story. So the first reason is CRMs were designed for sales operations, managers, analysts, technical people. That's one reason why sales reps struggle to use that. The other reason is, again, it's not the only component that reps need to deal with. There's Salesforce, there's a CPQ, there is there are other applications they need to deal with, like Clarify, whatever. And some businesses, deploy the digital adoption that I mentioned before in order to simplify the whole working, the workflows. But depending on the way you implement the additional layer, it might create a bottleneck or extra information you need to consume. So it doesn't really help you the other way around. It slows you down because now you need to read more instructions and you need to follow more steps. So one reason is CRMs were not designed for sales reps. The second reason is additional layers of information and applications you need to deal with. And of course, there is the the day-to-day work you need to keep up with. So altogether, I think that that's the reason why salespeople sometimes decide to put last, the housekeeping stuff, which is I'll update the stages or type in the information, etc. Because of those gaps and those challenges and pains, again, there is another technology that is evolving as we speak. Some of those technologies are trying to bridge the gap of reps not doing their job, typing in data into the opportunity or into the CRM. So those technologies are based on AI, and basically they extract the data from the call conversation, from the transcript, straight into specific fields in Salesforce. So reps basically don't have to do their housekeeping stuff. It's done automatically. The other technology I mentioned already, digital adoption. So if you implement that properly and correctly, it saves a great deal of time and it reduces so many friction. And you can actually, transition a very complex environment, CRM, into something that is extremely user-friendly, going from 10 steps into one step. This is extremely, different situation to be in. It makes reps are, they feel motivated to do their job because the only thing they need to do is just click one button instead of going through so many steps and hurdles, etc.
I mean, that sounds really, really interesting, I have to say. And I'm certainly going to explore.
It's not science fiction. Sorry for jump. It's not science fiction. It's happening as we speak.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely going to look at all these areas that you talked about, and it sounds super interesting. One thing that came to mind, though, Avner, is that it sounds to me that if we think along the maturity line there, what you described as the ideal way sounds quite mature to me. So I'm just wondering, you've obviously been doing this for a very long time. You probably have a lot of data, or at least some data, across a different number of clients. Now, without naming clients or anything like that, of course, but what are some of the common mistakes that your analysis has found salespeople are, conducting in their sales process? What are some of the common mistakes there that you've seen?
Across the sales stages, starting from sales development, etc., going all the way to, the early stages of, POC or product demonstration, etc. I'll focus on those early stages to begin with. I see it very often, lack of preparation. And whatever the reason is, we have back-to-back meetings, which is a big mistake, okay? Because you can't actually, allocate 100% of your time to calls. So having back-to-backs might be, a warning sign to begin with. So lack of preparation. Reps just jump on a call with prospect without spending time understanding, what could be a potential pushback, what could be the potential use case. Prospect usually don't know what they need. Okay, so they don't need a product, they need an advice. And reps tend to forget that and just focus on their product. And they rely on their skills, bells and whistles, or whatever it is. And they just jump on a call with a prospect without preparing, without spending time, without profiling. I really like to use the word profiling, building the intel around the prospect. What could be the potential pushback or, challenges areas they might challenge us with. Any information I can find on the prospect's website in order to embed in my pitch. They don't do that, okay? And it's really, it's a waste of opportunity to sound really very, very relevant. Problem number one would be lack of preparation. The other area is the handoff between sales dev, like SDR, BDRs, and sales. So again, because of culture, because of the work, because of back-to-back meetings, because we're trying to go very fast, etc. Sometimes we just tend to book those meetings with sales without sharing the right information with a salesperson. And again, what happens is what I mentioned before, lack of preparation, which basically leads to a situation where sales reps basically sound the same. So as a prospect, I'm meeting with you, and they know the next moment I'll meet with someone else, and they all practice the same idea, features and benefits, sales demo, without actually understanding, the reason I decided to reach out to that specific vendor, whatever. The other area I see most reps struggle with is understanding or discussing business goals. So they have their list of questions they need to ask, tell me why you decided to reach out to whatever. Can you share more information about, what is it that they're trying to achieve? Or they just focus on like the surface of the problem. They either afraid or don't have the skills to talk about the business goals. What exactly are you trying to achieve? Okay. What have you tried so far? Things like that. The earlier you do that, of course, assuming you have the right person to discuss business goals with, the earlier, the better, because then you can actually visualize the gap, where they are today, where they want to be, and bridging that gap with your solution. So I see that very often. The other area is a proactive approach, mainly around competition. Whatever the reason is, we meet with a prospect, either from a sales development point of view, BDR, SDR, whatever, and then moving to the next stage, which is the introduction, the discovery. We ask discovery questions, etc., but we don't talk about, the big elephant in the room. We don't talk about the competitive landscape. We don't talk about other solutions, technologies you might have decided to evaluate prior to meeting with me, okay? And if you have, would you be able to share some conclusions, some insights? What did you like? What didn't you like? Let's talk about that. I don't see this happening very often. And what happens as a result, competitive is always there. There's always a competition. So it shows up in later stages. And in most cases, this is converted into discounting, not going with a proactive approach, talking about the big elephant in the room, lack of preparation, lack of handoff, proper handoff, because sharing information like, pages of information doesn't help the next person in line. Okay, I can't afford reading this. Okay, I need a very specific, clear, checkpoints. Need, why, etc. These are the main areas I'm seeing very commonly.
That's really interesting. So just to summarize, so it was lack of preparation, the handover from the sales development person to the salesperson, understanding business outcomes or business objectives, and being able to have actually a business discussion with someone rather than a features and advantages discussion. And then the final part is, proactively talking about maybe competitors, as you say, but it may not be competitors. It could be, well, what other options are you considering out there, right? What have you kind of looked at? And it's so interesting that you mentioned that, mention all of those actually, because lack of preparation and I've interviewed and counting right now, it's an ongoing process, 419 now buyers. And that first one is like the most annoying to them, right? Lack of preparation basically means lack of courtesy or respect for my time, because you've just come on board. You have no idea what I do, or you're not demonstrating the fact that you know what I do and what my business is about, but you somehow expect that your solution could work for me. I mean, that is just disrespectful, quite frankly. And I think a part of that symptom is the vanity metric of number of calls, as opposed to, okay, how many of those are truly converting into the next stage? Now, a lot of sales leaders out there will say, well, we look at both. Yes, but the one that you equate to productivity is still the first one, which is number of calls. So actually that should be a barometer of activity health, but it shouldn't be the measure of real health. Exactly. And then the part about the competitors, that's really interesting, because salespeople almost want to kind of be delusional and say, if we don't talk about competitors, then, the buyer, it's not going to trigger anything for the buyers, or I'm scared of talking about my competitors because it might trigger the buyer to go and then investigate further. Well, look, we live in a radically transparent world. Most buyers now actually, don't engage with salespeople until after they've done a lot of homework. they're also being approached by these competitors. So it's kind of delusional to think that they're not going to be aware of that competitive approach, or at least a different way of doing something. So
I agree.
very, very interesting, Avner, that you said those things. Maybe we look at the other side of the coin now. So what are some of the good practices that you've seen?
From a new hire's point of view, transitioning into a situation where they have gained enough experience and expertise on mileage with, calling prospects, etc. Gaining confidence is extremely important. Confidence is a game changer. The way you sound on a call with a prospect, it can make a big difference. Whether the prospect is interested in spending time with you, or can't wait to move next to the next vendor, whatever. I think that confidence is extremely important. It's not what we sell, is how we sell. We all know that. And gaining confidence and projecting the confidence on the call, whether it's discussing pricing without offering discounts or too early, too much, whatever, or just focusing on your solution, or whether the prospect mentions a feature you don't have and you don't find yourself like cornered to talk about other features, or finding excuses why you don't support that feature, having the confidence to say, what do you care about this feature? What are you gaining to accomplish? What are you hoping to accomplish with this feature? Maybe I can show you a better way, more effective way to gain the expected outcome with whatever we have. So I think that confidence is extremely important. That's a game changer. That's reason number one for, succeeding, or for differentiating between top reps and I don't want to say bottom reps, but the core team. The other reason, or the other area, and this is a bit complicated, and I to be honest, I don't feel comfortable discussing, but I believe in that, so I'll mention that. Self-sufficient reps. And what I mean by that is, I've seen it before, by the way, and I've seen it in action. Reps that, take ownership of the first early stages, discovery, business discussion, even product demonstration. If they can do that on their own without burning expensive resources, sales engineers, pre-sales, whatever you want to call that. And I've seen a situation where sales engineers are being called to an introduction call, just to talk about one specific feature, or just, play a clip. Okay, so self-sufficient reps do better. Why? Because, again, going back to what I said before, confidence and trust. If I meet with a seller, if I meet with someone who really understands my business without relying on someone else, if I meet with someone who can talk about, the technology, talk about, the whatever happens in the market, he understands the market, he understands the trends. So he's sort of I see that person, that seller, as a trusted advisor, because he knows so much about, the architecture, the technology, the trends, other solutions. I'm not talking about the bits and bytes. I'm talking about, realizing the value of every feature, understanding the strengths and weaknesses of other solutions, being able to show me some nuggets, or a few minutes of, the product, how it works. And it makes that, I feel like, he customized the demo specifically to my needs without relying on someone else's, or he doesn't pose the call to call someone else to take over and show me something that, I find it very hard to believe that you really need a technical person to do that. Self-sufficient reps do better. That's a fact. And I'm talking about the transactional sales. The other area is a structured game plan, or flow, a selling flow. I've seen some cases where you have different segments, and every segment has its own go-to-market or selling flow or structure about the early stages. What do we do first? Discovery, introduction, POC, or product demonstration. How long does each component has to take, whatever. And I've seen cases where, a segment or a team does better because they follow the script. And I'm not talking about, words or keywords or reading off the screen. I'm talking about, we need to be able to qualify or disqualify very fast. So we're going to spend 15 minutes on discovery. If it makes sense, we'll go with the product demonstration. We're not going to expose our cards. We're not going to show you anything unless we really understand your use case. And the other way around, reps that just go with, all you can show with me in 60 minutes, it doesn't work. So structured plan, stick to the plan, focus on your plan, know exactly what you're going to do per criteria. What is the criteria? What is the exit point? What do I need to do in order to qualify or disqualify? Okay, if you follow the plan, it works. And proactive, as I said before, going with a proactive approach. We don't wait for the prospect to mention pushbacks or objections or competitive information, whatever. We go proactively and ask those questions. So those are the areas that work very well.
I love that answer. I have to say, because it touches on things that are close to my heart, but they're close to my heart because I know from the buyer's perspective those are hugely important. So you talked about confidence at the beginning, and in fact, trust is where competence and confidence, character and competence meet, right? In character, in my research, there are 7 elements to having a trustworthy character, but from the competence perspective, there are 9. And one of those 9 is fluency of speech. Oh, yeah. Right? We're wired to hear, in a social world, if we hear someone is umming and ahhing, or their body language is kind of moving, looking away, etc., all the time, that doesn't inspire us with confidence. And it may be irrational, but that's part of our heuristics. That's how we actually determine whether this is someone we can trust as part of our tribe. So really interesting that you mentioned that. You also mentioned about almost kind of like taking control and structure. Having which is surprising to me that people don't seem to get that, right? This is, you're entering into a business landscape. There has to be a plan, scenario planning, right? People don't scenario plan, right? I use the example where to boil water, it takes almost, when you get to the 99 degrees, to move from 99 to 100, it takes almost the same amount of energy as it took for you to get to 99, to get from 99 to 100, to break that barrier. And yet people don't plan the scenarios when it comes to the negotiation process, right? Or the latter stages of the sales cycle. They don't plan, what is that person going to ask me? What are the tough questions? What is my response going to be? So it's incredibly interesting that you mentioned those things, because, and the last one, which was self-sufficiency, the second one, which was self-sufficiency. And that surprises me, I have to say, because it doesn't surprise me that it exists, it's that it happens. It surprises me that it still happens, because there's the situation where salespeople are getting very limited sales advice or sales training, and they're still getting more product training. Yeah. So when I see that, and then I still see that they don't know enough about the product and they need to have a sales engineer in, I would say my first question is, well, what are you doing in that product training then? Because it sounds like a waste of time. So the fact that you see that the best sales reps are more self-sufficient, again, that equates to trust, right? Which you explained there. So really, really interesting. Gosh, I have to say, Avner, I wish I had more time, because there were some questions that I really wanted to ask you around, and maybe actually, do you know what? Why don't we ask this one? Because this is an important one. In one of your posts, I saw that you mentioned that, companies can find answers to some incredibly valuable questions like, when and why does competition show up? Now, I'm sure you can talk about this for hours, but in the few minutes that you have remaining, can you talk a bit about that? Because you've mentioned proactively talking and raising competition or other decisions that buyers are making.
In most cases, and again, most cases, not every business does that. Some businesses really rely on leverage BI to full effect. But in most cases, what I'm saying is, leaders rely on traditional reports that say, hey, we are at risk. Okay, there are 4 million or 40 million or 50 million at risk because of competition. That's a fact. We lose money. We lose a big chunk of our revenue because of competition. And the worst case is, it's getting worse every time. Every quarter, competition catches up with us, with our technology. So the trend doesn't look very promising, on the contrary. So what I do is, in order to really find out, there is a reason. There are reasons that, led us to that situation. And I'm not talking about whatever happens outside of the company. Like, there's nothing we can do about it. Okay. Maybe there is, but that's the way it is. Competition catches up with you. But, you need on your side, okay, from enablement, from a leadership point of view, you need to train your reps how to tackle that, how to proactively manage that. Okay, because things are not going to change very fast. Competition is going to stay there forever. It's good. It's good for the business. Long story short, in order to really help leaders to understand the reasons why we are seeing an increase of, competition, I came up with the idea of finding out how competition shows up per stage of the sales cycle. And then the reasons why sales reps are not basically proactively managing this, asking questions in order to surface any possible competition whatsoever. Long story short, the outcome is, imagine seeing a graph or being able to understand what is the impact or what is the percentage of calls where competition shows up per stage. And if you can actually see that, competition shows up only at later stages, proposal, negotiation, then you have a problem. Why? Because you didn't do your job. okay, because it didn't just show up for, out of the blue. Whereas, top reps, or, from ideal point of view, if you can actually see competition early, okay, in the journey from a sales development point of view, okay, asking questions like, what options are you evaluating? What other tools are you using, etc. This can actually help the sales reps later on when they meet with a prospect to fine tune their game plan, going back to the structured game plan. So if I know that you, okay, Mr. Prospect, are considering going with another option, or have used other technologies for the last 6 months, and you decided to reach out to us, so probably over the last 6 months, okay, yeah, you didn't see any value out of those technologies. I can use that, okay? I can actually leverage that in my pitch or in my demo. I can focus on what doesn't work with those alternative solutions and focus on my strength. So that's a very long story. I don't know if
no, that was great. Yeah, that was absolutely great. And you know what? I think we might have to invite you back on the show again, because there's so much to cover here.
If I may jump in and just go back to your previous question, then you can decide whether to use that or not. Going back to what you asked me before, like, why reps struggle to do their job, and, etc. The reason reps, going back to self-sufficiency or self-sufficient reps, etc. One of the reasons reps are not able to go with a self-sufficient approach, sometimes it's because of the product they need to demonstrate. And from a leadership point of view, this is sign number one, okay, that if your sales reps are struggling to demonstrate your capabilities, your prospect, your buyer, your customers probably struggle with that as well. Okay, so you need to go with you need to become a self-sufficient, a self-service product first, in order to help your reps and help your customers. So long story short, again, if reps are not self-sufficient, if they struggle to demonstrate the product, that's your first warning sign.
That is a really interesting perspective. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it's not, we're not, just to be clear, we're not saying that you have to be an expert on the technicalities, but there is a level of proficiency that is required in order for you to inspire confidence with the buyer. The buyer knows you're not the expert. That's why you have the technical people, but you should be able to understand the applications of that software or service, whatever it might be, to the buyer, and at least be able to answer confidently on a lot of the issues. Yeah, I totally agree. And I love that perspective. So Avner, what books or influencers or thought leaders do you think our listeners or viewers should really read or listen to? And these could be ones that you've read in the past, or it could be ones that you're currently reading right now.
Thanks for asking. I think it's important, being an Israeli based in Israel and working with overseas companies, mainly in the US and other places. I think it's important for everyone to understand, other people's culture. And for that reason, I decided to read a book that basically explains or trains other people how to work with Israelis. And I really want to start with that. And that book, actually, you can see that on my shelf. It's called The Israeli Culture, Business Culture. And it basically gives everyone an idea of what is an Israeli, what does it take to work with an Israeli. And it's certainly important, really recommend reading that. The other book is Making Channel Sales Work. Even though it says channels, I think it's like, A to Z, the Bible, or I really enjoyed reading that like 3 times. It's all about, the Sandler methodology and what does it take in order to establish a channel or a program. But it can be applied to any other sales, area. So it covers everything you need to know if you're new to sales, all the methodologies and best practices to gain trust, as we discussed before, and of course to establish a channel program efficiently. The other book is The Challenger Sales. Going back to your first question, what is happening today in the sales space, etc. I think that everyone understands that it doesn't take one methodology, and to broaden your perspectives and ideas, and I think that we need more tools in order to succeed. So I really recommend reading that, and of course taking what works and ignoring some areas that may not work for everyone. For the sake of time, I won't be, I won't discuss, every bit and bite of the main takeaways, but I really recommend reading that and applying that in your early stages of the sales.
Okay. Yeah, and that was great. So we'll leave a link to each one of those 3 in the show notes. One final question: how can our viewers and listeners learn more about you and get in touch?
So there's a page, LinkedIn page, Avner Baruch, and there's a YouTube channel called Moneyball, Project Moneyball. And my website, Project Moneyball, basically where I discuss everything that we discussed today.
Again, we'll leave a link in the show notes so that people can easily get in contact with you. Avner, this has been a great conversation, and I've certainly learned a lot. There's a few of these technologies that I'm going to have a look at for sure. I'm sure that our listeners have as well. So thank you very much for coming on the show. And yeah, I'll be watching what you do very closely.
And thanks again for having me here. Really enjoyed meeting with you again. And this was an amazing conversation. Looking forward to more sessions like this.
Great. Absolutely.